Mathis Family Matters. And as you see on there, our influence is that, black families are great families. And no, they're not filled with, just inner fighting.
America's favorite TV judge spent 24 seasons telling other people how to fix their lives, and behind closed doors, his own marriage was falling apart without him even realizing how bad things had gotten. Divorce papers landed with his name on them after 39 years together, and Judge Greg Mathis and his wife Linda appeared to be finished. That's what everyone assumed at the time, but what happened next would flip this entire story on its head. The news broke in late 2024 when Linda Reese Mathis walked into Los Angeles County Court and filed for divorce, listing July 17th as their official separation date, and citing irreconcilable differences as the reason. Spousal support appeared in her request, and because all 4 of their children had reached adulthood, custody drama never entered the picture. On paper, the whole thing looked straightforward, but nothing about this situation felt simple, and the internet was about to lose its collective mind over what it all meant. This wasn't some Hollywood couple known for chaos and tabloid drama. Greg and Linda had built a reputation as the picture of stability over the course of nearly 4 decades together. Red carpet appearances, family events, and that unshakable energy most couples never reach had defined their public image for years. Fans who saw those headlines didn't just feel surprised by the news, they felt something closer to betrayal, almost like they'd been lied to about what this marriage actually was. And that's when the detective work began across every corner of social media. A detail most people missed at the time would turn out to matter more than anyone realized. While the internet busied itself building conspiracy theories and dissecting every photo from the past decade, Greg and Linda were still living under the same roof. They never actually separated households, and that small fact would prove significant later in the story. Nobody paid attention to that part yet because everyone was too focused on what Greg said next. Most celebrities disappear when their marriage implodes and let their publicist handle the fallout. Greg did the opposite. Days after the filing went public, paparazzi caught him at LAX looking nothing like the composed figure who had built a career on television. The man who made his name being unshakable appeared broken, his voice cracking as he called this the worst time of his entire life. And that's when he said something that stopped people cold, telling other men to learn from his mistake and warning them not to neglect their wives.
Good, rather, it's the worst days of my life. How about that?
Okay, well, I'm sorry to hear that. I wanted to ask you, with news of the separation, how are you holding up?
Not holding up very well. Maybe I'll be an example for other men, cautionary tale. Don't neglect your wife. See, I'm here at the airport now, flying out, as I have for 40 or for 25 years. My wife has been third, serving the community, taping my show, having fun with friends. That's what happens, guys. Never be too busy or never have too much fun beyond your wife.
That single word changed everything about how people understood this story. Neglect. He didn't point fingers at Linda or spin some carefully crafted PR narrative about growing apart over time. Instead, he laid out exactly what had gone wrong in terms that left no room for interpretation. The constant travel, the late nights, the work trips, and friend hangouts that had stacked up year after year until they formed a wall between them. His admission was blunt, explaining that when you're gone that much, your partner starts to feel invisible. And worse than that, they start to wonder what you're really doing when you're not home. The narrative split into 2 completely different stories at that point. Lane 1 followed what Greg actually said, framing this as a situation about priorities and time and the slow erosion that comes from emotional distance. Lane 2 took shape in the minds of people online who decided that if she filed after 39 years together, something bigger had to be hiding underneath the surface. And Lane 2 spread like wildfire across every platform. Comment sections transformed into investigation boards within hours of the airport interview going viral. Old interviews resurfaced with timestamps and annotations. Random photos got analyzed frame by people convinced they could spot the truth everyone else had missed. The story shifted from a couple dealing with distance to a husband allegedly hiding a double life. And some corners of the internet started whispering about secret children and hidden relationships without a single piece of evidence to back any of it up. When a famous marriage cracks open, people don't wait for facts to emerge on their own timeline. They construct their own version of events and treat speculation like scripture. None of that speculation was ever confirmed by anyone with actual knowledge of the situation. Greg addressed the cheating rumors directly in a follow-up interview, stating plainly that an affair wasn't what caused this divorce filing.
Now, that might not be true according to you about this woman that allegedly you slept with, you allegedly got her pregnant. Let me draw up the skeleton, Judge, and then you fill in the meat.
Wendy, I didn't read that part. Now you making that up.
Okay, let me draw up.
Now you and WBLS about to be sued for defamation. You gonna make some stuff.
Okay, Judge, you
wasn't
are
even alleged.
Okay,
now, that's called defamation.
All right.
That's called defamation, Wendy.
Okay.
She did not allege that.
All right, look.
I'll tell you what she alleged. It wasn't that.
All right, you tell me what she alleged, Judge, in all of your anger.
I'm not angry.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I also got it.
I didn't do it.
I also
and
got
I
it
have
from
nothing to do with it. And I don't know the woman. Never met her. Never used.
But he also added something that threw fuel on the fire he was trying to put out, admitting that he understood why Linda might have suspected infidelity given the circumstances. When you're absent that often, doubt creeps in whether the suspicion is justified or not. The problem with saying that publicly is that people only absorb the first half of the statement and bury the denial that follows it. The reason these rumors gripped people so intensely comes down to image and the way public perception works. Judge Mathis isn't just a guy who appeared on television for a couple of decades. He's a brand built on a very specific foundation. 24 seasons of telling strangers to get their lives together, preaching accountability and tough love and refusing to accept excuses from anyone who stood in his courtroom. His original show ended in 2023 and he launched Mathis Court almost immediately afterward, which meant the divorce headlines landed while he remained very much in the public spotlight. Something about watching the person who judges everyone else suddenly face judgment themselves proved impossible for people to look away from. That's why this story felt bigger than typical celebrity gossip about rich people having relationship problems. What the public witnessed looked like an image collapsing in real time. The careful construction of decades crumbling in front of an audience that had believed in what it represented. Everything shifted when people started connecting the dots they'd ignored before. That detail about Greg and Linda still living together turned out to be more than a footnote in the story. It was the first sign that another chapter existed beyond the filing. Reports started surfacing just weeks after the headlines peaked that Greg and Linda weren't actually finished with each other. Conversations were happening, work was being put in, and the divorce that had prompted so many people to write obituaries for their marriage quietly stalled without any official announcement explaining why. Then they confirmed it themselves in interviews that caught almost everyone off guard: reconciliation. The whole separation had lasted about 3 weeks from start to finish. 3 weeks of headlines dominating entertainment news. 3 weeks of rumors multiplying faster than anyone could track them. 3 weeks of the internet acting like it had cracked some grand mystery about a man it had watched on television for years. And then they chose each other again, and the story took a turn nobody had predicted. Linda's explanation reframed everything people thought they understood about the filing. She didn't drag Greg through public accusations or list his failures for the world to judge. Her description of the decision centered on something simpler and more personal, explaining that she needed to put herself first after decades of being the one holding things together. While he built his career and traveled the country and became a household name, she had been the foundation keeping their family stable. Filing wasn't necessarily about ending the marriage permanently, it was about demanding to be seen by someone who had stopped looking. That demand clearly landed the way she intended it to. Greg's response in later interviews made clear that the wake-up call hit him harder than anything he'd experienced since losing his mother. A comparison he made himself when describing the fear of watching 39 years potentially walk out the door. Taking the relationship for granted had become so routine that he didn't recognize what was happening until the paperwork forced him to confront it. Something clicked in that moment of near loss that apparently hadn't clicked during all the years of gradual distance. The changes that followed weren't dramatic gestures designed to generate positive headlines. Greg got specific about what actually shifted in their dynamic, talking about being home more often and putting down the distractions that had accumulated over the years. Making Linda the priority instead of assuming she'd always be there waiting whenever he decided to show up. No apology tour or public redemption arc, just the unglamorous work that actually holds a marriage together when nobody's watching and no cameras are rolling. Most celebrity divorces reach one of two destinations after the initial filing. Either a brutal court battle plays out with accusations flying from both legal teams, or cold silence descends and both parties pretend the other person no longer exists. Greg and Linda chose neither of those paths. They hit a wall, faced the genuine possibility of losing everything they'd spent 4 decades building together, and then pulled back from the edge. Not because reconciliation was the easy choice, but because the alternative looked worse than doing the difficult work of rebuilding. The facts of this situation, stripped of all the speculation and conspiracy theories that surrounded them, tell a specific story. Linda filed in August of 2024 after months of feeling unseen. Greg admitted publicly that neglect was the problem, and denied that infidelity played any role in her decision. Rumors spread across the internet with nothing verified backing them up, and after a 3-week separation that never actually involved separate households, they reconciled and committed to rebuilding what had fractured. Everything else that circulated online, the whispers about secrets and hidden lives and dramatic betrayals, remains noise unless real proof ever surfaces to support any of it. The deeper question this whole situation raises has nothing to do with whether cheating occurred. What it actually forces people to consider is what happens when someone you love feels alone for years while standing right next to you. Whether traditional betrayal matters when making your partner feel invisible becomes its own kind of broken promise. Whether filing for divorce after 39 years represents giving up on something worth saving, or whether it represents the only move loud enough to finally be heard by someone who stopped listening a long time ago. This isn't just celebrity drama playing out for public entertainment. What happened between Greg and Linda Mathis functions as a case study for anyone who assumes a long history means you can stop showing up and still expect everything to hold together. Drop your perspective in the comments, because this one deserves more than surface-level reactions, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of the celebrity gossip. Thanks for watching.